What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we are talking wildcards. So we're in the international break. So this week, going to do a bit of different content, and then next week will be the usual stuff, transfer tips, watch lists, and all that good stuff. Some of that might come in this week, but ultimately we're going to do a few different things. As today is wildcard. Now, there is always a lot of wildcards activated over the international break. In the past, it was to get price rises, but generally you get 2 weeks worth of tinkering. A lot of people have seen kind of 3 weeks worth of games. They're happy to make changes. There's fixture runs coming up. There might be restructures and stuff like that to do. So we're going to talk about it all in this video. So we're going to go through some points about why you might consider a wildcard, some key players to think about, and of course we'll do some draft tinkering at the end. So if you enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and let's jump into it. Okay, so first of all, I want to try and tackle the question, should you wildcard, right? And basically, people are going to ask themselves this question every single week, basically, every single game week, until they actually use it. And I actually find sometimes, right, and this is not a reason to use the wildcard, by the way, but sometimes I find that once I've got it out the way, and you shouldn't think of it like that, but I do. Once I've got it out of the way, I kind of refocus. It kind of focuses me. I can't be really super knee-jerky. I have to plan ahead. I have to be patient with my players because I can't just wildcard them out every single week. So sometimes I find using it, especially early, helps me refocus. But it doesn't mean that's the reason that you should do it, right? So some points you need to think about is how many genuine issues do you have? So what I've done here is put my team up, and I'm looking at this, and I'm telling you now, if I put this team on Twitter, I'll probably get 70% would say you don't need to wildcard it, and then you'd have 30% that say you do. I mean, I got someone that told me I needed to wildcard my team after game week 1. So people view it in different ways. But how many genuine issues do I have? So you could look at that and say Rafinha and Bamford are issues. They're playing Liverpool. But I think if I wildcard, I would definitely have Rafinha anyway. So it's only one player, and Leeds fixtures after Liverpool are really good. So is that a genuine issue? Tony, you could see that as an issue. He's only got 1 goal in the first 3. He might drop in price again. There's probably better forwards that I can put in that price. Ronaldo, Lukaku, Calvert-Lewin, for example. But I can easily get to them in 2 moves. So then I'm only taking a -4. Is that enough to wildcard? Probably not. But then you have to kind of ask yourself, how many other moves would you do? And they don't always have to be these big, massive moves where you're transferring out like 7 injured players and you've got a bunch of players that aren't nailed on, because you're never going to manage your team to that level. You're always going to try and keep it looking good. So generally, if you're an engaged FPL manager, your team's always going to look good. So that's something to consider, right? There's never going to be a perfect time to wildcard. Yes, people will talk about game week 7, game week 8. It doesn't mean it works for everyone. One thing to ask yourself is, have you seen enough? For some people, they've seen the first 3 game weeks and they're like, okay, I really need this player. I really need to get rid of that player. And that's fine. Only you can make that judgment. You need to think about, have you seen enough of those players? What are the fixture swings? So some of the teams that are about to have really good fixtures. Again, if you count Leeds after Liverpool, Everton has still got some really nice fixtures, especially in the short term. Wolves do, Arsenal do. But then you have to ask yourself how many players you actually want from those teams. So Calvert-Lewin is probably a standout. Luka Dean is kind of okay for Everton, but there's other good defenders as well. So I wouldn't say he's a need to wildcard. Wolves are looking really good. They just can't put the ball in the back of the net. And they've got some really nice fixtures, really cheap options as well. So you could get ahead of the curve. For example, the transfer window at the time of recording hasn't closed yet. If West Ham were to sign a couple of midfielders that could get in Ben Rama's way, then the wildcard could be a time to jump off him. It's not that he's a bad player. It's not that he's been bad. He's obviously got us a lot of points, but you could be ahead of the curve on making that move, for example. So there's quite a few good fixtures coming. Obviously, Liverpool do, but most people have got Liverpool in there. Who are you removing as well? Because it's very easy to just look at your team, especially if they haven't fired recently, and be like, right, I've got to get rid of them. And like, if I wildcarded this team, there's probably Tony, Bamford, even though I've only just got him in. Ben Rama I'd probably shift. I'd maybe shift Fernandes as well. Probably fix my defence. So I don't even know if I'd have Veltman or Ayling. And I'd definitely get rid of Tsimikas because obviously he's holding the Liverpool spot for me. So there's quite a few players that I would change. That's quite big, but they're not really most of the main core 11 that I'm playing every single week. I'd probably keep the same goalkeeper. I'd probably keep Trent and Shaw. They're all not bad players. So there isn't really a massive need to do it. But certain things might trigger it. So for example, if Jota was suddenly nailed because Firmino was going to be out for a while, well, I definitely want Jota for the fixtures Liverpool have got, but I can't get him because I've got triple Liverpool. So not only do I need to transfer Jota in, I also need to get rid of Tsimikas. This is all while wanting to get Ronaldo or Lukaku or Calvert-Lewin all at the same time. And suddenly there's quite a few moves to make And I might just wildcard, even though my team is looking good. And I should say, like, I'm not 100% set on it. There's a few things I want to fall in place before I do it. But I don't think you have to, and I put this on the last point, you don't have to activate the chip right now. Now, just because something happened last season doesn't mean it'll work again. But last year, I spent the international break really thinking about it, put it into my head, if I was going to wildcard, this is the team I would go for. And I've already got a draft and stuff like that, and we'll do some tinkering at the end, to the point where I actually activated the wildcard on the deadline stream, right? And it wasn't to try and fool anyone. I just really wasn't sure. And then I was like, I'm just going to go for it. And it wasn't chaos, it wasn't panic, because I already knew the team that I was going to wildcard to, so it wasn't a huge problem. So what I would say is, if you're kind of 50-50 like me, you're not really sure you might do it, just start making a team now, and it doesn't matter if you activate the chip later. Obviously, you want to try and catch some price rises, preferably, but I don't think, usually there's not a huge amount of price falls and price rises over the international break. There's already been quite a few now. There won't be a huge amount over the next week or so. So you have to look at your team. How many genuine issues do you have? And they don't, like I said, they don't have to be big issues. You're never going to get to a point where half your team is injured, because you'll transfer them out, you'll make other moves and stuff like that. But if you've got like a restructure that you want to do, there's kind of 3 or 4 key players, plus you can fix your bench and stuff like that, and you're happy that you can get through other periods of the season without the wildcard, then I think it's fine. I don't really worry that if I wildcard now, I probably won't use the next one until after game week 30, because I'll manage my team. I'm just thinking that now might be a better time than later. It may or may not be, right? Sometimes things work in FPL, sometimes they don't. But I think there's plenty of good reasons to do it now, but not every team is going to have to do it or need to do it. Okay, so I was going to have like a section of a short list of players or must-own players, but I didn't want to label them as must-own, because there's a little bit more to it than that. So I'm going to talk about what I consider 3 key players that people are going to be thinking about when they wildcard, and then I'm going to talk about some other options, and then we'll do kind of the draft and stuff like that. So one of the options is Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, he's still not in FPL. He still hasn't been priced. I think he's going to be 12.5. He could be 13. I definitely don't think he's going to be any higher than that. I think that would be mad, given that he's 36. He's just coming into Man United. Obviously, if this was like 6 or 7 years ago, then yeah, you price him possibly 13.5 or even maybe 14 million, which he's been before. But right now, I think he has to be 12.5 or 13. By the time you watch this, he may have been priced, right? So just take that into account. I don't think he's going to be too much more than 13. And you can see his numbers are still great, right? He's 36, yes, but 0.5 expected goals per 90 is decent. Not much in the way of kind of assist threat. We know that he's there to score goals, and he still managed to score 29 last season. I think, like, a lot of people are saying, like, we don't need him straight away, he's not going to score as many goals, but I'm kind of treating him as any other player, in that if Man United have got good fixtures, I get him in. If they got bad fixtures, I'll switch to someone else. So I was chatting about it on the stream last night, you may have seen it, and there was a bit of a discussion about who's better, right, Ronaldo or Lukaku, and I was kind of saying, it doesn't really matter, because I can get both. I can either get both on a wild card, or I can get one, then get the other one. So maybe, for example, you keep Ronaldo for Newcastle, West Ham, Villa, maybe Everton. You can make that decision then. And then you switch to Lukaku, who we know has got really good fixtures for Chelsea. And we'll come on to him in a minute. There's a lot of kind of talk about whether Ronaldo will start straight away, whether he'll be on the bench. And I've said this already, I'll be very surprised if he doesn't start versus Newcastle. He's already had a bit of a pre-season. I think he played minutes for Juventus in their first game. He's probably going to play in the international break. We can obviously keep an eye on that before the deadline. And if he's playing, I just don't see why Solskjaer just wouldn't put him straight in. I know that Greenwood's been playing well, but again, his goal against Wolves came from the right. In the second game, even though he'd played well against Leeds in the first game, in game week 2, Martial was put up front. So I still don't think that Solskjaer considers Greenwood an out-and-out striker every single week. And obviously, Cavani's there anyway, right? So I think Ronaldo's just going to go straight into the team. I just don't see why that wouldn't happen. But obviously, we can wait and see what Solskjaer says. If he says, I'll have to wait and see, or he's a doubt, he's got a little bit of an injury or a knock, then fair enough, we change our minds. But I think I just think his ownership is going to skyrocket quick, and Newcastle at home is a great fixture. You could see him as a captain. I think he'll be on penalties as well. So if I was wildcard, I'd seriously consider going for him. But Lukaku is cheaper, so he could be a better option. So just on Lukaku, right, I guess one of the key things on a wildcard, which we'll discuss when we do the tinkering in a minute, is whether you have two premiums. Now, you have to, in my opinion, you have to have Salah, right? That is not a question to be asked. He has to be in the team. The fixtures are for Liverpool are too good. He's listed as a midfielder, so he's got more ways to get points. And obviously, he's been consistent in the Premier League for over 4 seasons now. So he has to be in there. So the question comes then, do you have Salah, Lukaku, and Ronaldo, or do you just have Salah plus one of them? My opinion right now is I would probably just go for one of them. One of the reasons for that is I just think it takes too much out of your team to have 3 premiums. You probably have to get rid of Trent, and I think Liverpool's fixtures are good enough that you probably could keep him. But also, there's some very, very good value strikers, and obviously you can only captain 1 premium every week. So you might decide that Lukaku against Aston Villa with no Martinez, no Buendia, is possibly the team to go for and to captain. But obviously Salah's got Leeds, Ronaldo's got Newcastle. So it's not that Lukaku's a bad captain option this week in Gameweek 4, because he's absolutely not. It's just that he's not necessarily the standout option, because there's lots of other good options as well. Then you've got Spurs, then you've got Man City. Now, Spurs have kept 3 clean sheets, but they've also conceded a lot of shots. So I could see Lukaku possibly scoring in that game. And Man City's tough, but again, he could score, but it's not a guarantee. And this is what I was trying to say last night, is it's not that I think that Lukaku, okay, he's got Spurs, he's got Man City, therefore he cannot score any goals. Of course he can, but you'd imagine the volume or the potential volume of goals that he will score will be reduced. So the next 3 fixtures don't look great. Villa does, but Spurs and Man City doesn't. So I think for me right now, I'm making a call between Ronaldo or Lukaku. Now, one advantage Lukaku has is he's going to be probably $1 million or 1.5 million cheaper, and that's going to let you do a lot with your team. So that has to be considered. And from game week 7, he probably looks like the better option. And also, one thing to consider, have I said consider a lot? I feel like I've said it a lot. But one thing to think about is that his expected goals per 90 and his expected assists per 90 were both higher than Ronaldo last year. So forget about what actual goals were scored for a second. I know people don't like doing that, but just think about that. That possibly means he's got more potential for scoring goals. And I think the thing I like about Lukaku over Ronaldo is Chelsea are a well-drilled side. They know how they want to play. Tuchel's got them coached really well. And Man United, like we've already seen it, they smash Leeds and then they struggle against Southampton at times. They struggle against Wolves at times. And you're just not really quite sure about them. It's not to say that I think Ronaldo is going to be a bad option or anything like that. I don't think he needs coaching. He's just going to stand front and centre and score lots of goals. But I guess Lukaku is probably playing for the better team right now, and he's cheaper. So for me, it's not about both; it's about one or the other. And I think a lot of that comes down to what you're going to do with the money. Right now, if I had to wildcard right this second and get it locked in, I'd probably start with Ronaldo and then move to Lukaku in game week 7. So I touched on Trent Alexander-Arnold just a minute ago. I mean, the big question is, can you go without him? Now, I've already seen quite a few wildcard drafts be put up with Lukaku, with space for Ronaldo anyway, plus Salah, no Trent Alexander-Arnold, and the teams look pretty good, right? And you could make a case to go for one of the cheaper Liverpool defenders. Matip looks pretty nailed on right now. I would expect Matip to keep playing until he gets injured. I think that partnership with Van Dijk is good, and I think Matip is actually a really good defender. The problem is he's just never fit enough, so I wouldn't necessarily go for him to cover Liverpool clean sheets, but it is, I guess, an option for some people. And I'm looking at these fixtures, like, I think the 3 green fixtures, which makes sense, right? They're green for a reason. They're good fixtures. Palace, Brentford, and Watford could be good for could be good for clean sheets, I should say. I guess the fact that Brentford and Watford are both away games isn't ideal. You'd rather they were at Anfield. But I think Trent's got so much to offer, right? We've already seen attack and returns. He's playing quite advanced again now, and also coming in quite centrally as well. You saw his assist for Mane the other week. That was from a very central position. Really good assist, by the way, as well. So I just don't think 7.5 million is too much. I think he's already got 22 points, so he's already averaging over 7 points per match. Leeds is tricky because they're a good attacking side, so the clean sheet becomes difficult. But then Palace, Brentford, and Watford. So 4 of the next 5, or even 3 of the next 5, if you want to say that Leeds is difficult, are really good. And there's nothing to say that the Man City game might not be a tight game. They could nick a clean sheet. He could get forward, nick a free kick, whatever it is. So I would preferably want to start with him. But I do think there's a lot you can do with the money. If you go down to like a 6 or a 5.5 million player, that's obviously saving you like £2 million, right? You can use that in midfield to upgrade a player. Maybe that's your way to get Lukaku and Ronaldo. So I do think there's a case to be made to go without Trent. I'm just not sure I'd like to drop him ahead of those fixtures. So these are 3 players that either would make me think about wildcarding or should pretty much be on a wildcard. So Calvert-Lewin, for example, as long as he's fit, we're going to have to wait and see about an injury update. I'm going to suspect that he'll probably be fine. is on penalties now as well. So he looks like a really good prospect going forward. Penalties does really help. We've already seen, right? He's had 2. And Rafa Benitez did kind of clear out the confusion between him and Richarlison. That Calvert-Lewin gets the first one. And I think he said if there was 2, then Richarlison would get the second one. But obviously, it's not very often you get 2 penalties in a game. So Calvert-Lewin's on penalties, and he was already such a good prospect that he should probably be in our teams. He might also rise to 8.3. But yeah, let's wait for fitness concerns and stuff to kind of blow over first. Jota and Torres are 2 players that would make me consider wildcard. Not on their own, there would still have to be some other reasons for my team to kind of chop and change players. But if Firmino, if the injury update comes back from him that he's going to be out for like a month, then Jota has some really, really nice attacking fixtures. We've just seen it, right? Leeds, Brentford, Watford, all to come really soon. And it's not often you get like a nailed-on player that's so good. I mean, look at his expected goals and expected assists per 90. That's super high. That's some of the best in the league, right? Now, obviously for him, per 90, you have to apply a bit of context and say, well, he never plays 90 minutes. He's not even guaranteed to start. And therefore, those numbers don't really matter. And I would completely agree with that, which is why so much of this hinges on what happens with Firmino. If Firmino's going to miss like 2 to 3 games, then Jota suddenly becomes a very big consideration that people want to put in their teams, but a lot of us can't because we've got Tsimikas. And so therefore, that might mean a bit of a restructure along with a bunch of other things you want to do, like maybe putting a premium striker in and getting rid of Bruno Fernandes, who we should probably really talk about soon, and getting him in. And also Torres, very similar. Decent numbers, but doesn't necessarily get the minutes. But right now he's playing up front. De Bruyne's not back from injury yet. They haven't signed a new striker. Pep Guardiola has obviously complimented him quite a bit and said how good he is at playing that position. He would do that because you obviously might have to play in there all week, all season. But I think he generally looks like a potential good option for 7.1. As always, you've got those considerations around Man City players that they may not play, and that's an issue. But for someone that's 7.1 million that's potentially going to play up front for one of the best, if not the best attacking side in the league, I think you have to consider that a move. So this is the thing I was trying to say earlier with a wild card. It's not necessarily about one big player, but if you're thinking, right, I want to shift to a 3-4-3, I want to get a premium striker, I haven't got quite the other strikers that I want to get, and I want to get Jota, and I want to get Torres. At the same time, I could fix my defence. That might in itself be a good enough reason to wildcard, not just waiting around for a bunch of injuries or something like that. Okay, so this is a draft that I've pretty much very quickly thrown together, okay? So I'm not saying if I wildcarded, this is the draft that I would end up with, but it kind of gives us some key talking points. So the reason there's 0.3 million in the bank is because I'm going to assume that Ronaldo is going to be 12.5, and therefore I've got enough money to do Kane to Ronaldo. So Kane wouldn't be in my wildcard draft. I'd either have Ronaldo or Lukaku. I just think that Kane's about to run into a couple of poor fixtures after Crystal Palace, Chelsea, and then Arsenal. The fixtures after that are quite good, by the way. So there's nothing to say that Kane isn't going to be the best premium over the next 6 weeks. But in the short term, I don't think he is necessarily where I would go, right? I've got Calvert-Lewin, I've got Antonio, I've got the Traore spot in there, and Jota as well. Jota relies heavily for me on Firmino. I mean, arguably, right, you could say that Jota started the first 2, the easier fixtures, that he might start kind of some of the next like 5 as well. Leeds, Palace, Brentford, and Watford in particular. So he could be an option anyway. But if Firmino was out, then I'd really want him in. He's just that good. The other option is, of course, just to go to Torres. That gives you a little bit more money to spend. And I would probably, if I went for Torres, use that money to upgrade the defence. As always, though, you're thinking similarly to pre-season when you were doing your Game Week 1 squad. But, of course, now you don't have a wild card to back you out of an annoying situation. So one thing that I would strongly consider for this team is it's got Duffy and Livramento. What if they lose their place? Where's the upgrade? Does that matter? Is Shaw, Trent and Semedo good enough long-term to tie me over? It might not be. So some of that money from doing Jota to Torres might then be used to upgrade Livramento or Duffy to a 4.5 instead. Just to give you that extra bit of kind of safety. But I think if I had the squad that I wanted and I had to go in with 2 4.1s, then I probably would. Obviously, some of you will have already made money on Tsimikas, and maybe you've earned like an extra 0.1 million out of that. So you might have a little bit more money to spend. You might have a bit less money to spend as well. But something like that. So I would ask myself, how many changes am I making from my current team? So Calvert-Lewin, the other premium striker spot, Torres, Traore, Sissoko, Livramento, Duffy, Semedo. So I'm making 8 changes to my squad. But then I would ask myself, going back to my first original point right at the start, how many of these are genuine issues? How many of these are, players I'm taking out that I don't really need to? So I'm swapping Torres and Traore and Sissoko into midfield. But I mean, one of them's Basuma out for Sissoko, so who really cares? Yes, Sissoko might be a bit more attacking. Yes, it frees up a Brighton spot potentially, but that's not really a move for wildcarding. Traore and Torres come in for Benrahma for one of them. Again, Benrahma could be good going forward, and obviously Fernandes is the other one. On Fernandes, I think if I was wildcarding, I would definitely get rid of him. I think if you've got him and you're not wildcarding, you don't have to get rid of him. We're all assuming he loses penalties. I think he probably will. It doesn't mean he can't get points, right? He got his hat-trick without a penalty. So the idea that he can't score points without penalties is crazy. He's still got quite a few attacking returns last year. But I think if I was wildcarding, you've kind of got to make that decision to restructure to a premium forward spot, and so you've got to lose Fernandes, and that's where Torres comes in, and he could be really good value, right, if he keeps his place, but we'll have to see if Man City sign another striker. And then I've got Semedo, Duffy and Livramento over Veltman, Ayling, and whoever my other 4 million spot is, Simicast right now. So Simicast isn't being played anyway. So swapping them in for Livramento, Duffy, yeah, okay, it gives me a bit more cover on the bench right now, but it's not been a big deal so far, and I don't expect it to be going forward. Like in my main team right now, I've got Veltman. If he plays, especially if he goes in at right wing back for Brighton, he could be just as good as Semedo going forward. So it's nice to get Traore and Semedo in there because you're taking advantage of fixture swings. But I don't feel like the players that I've got right now have got bad fixture swings anyway. So if I did for my own team, like Fernandes down to Torres, for example, then I could afford to get Ronaldo or Lukaku in straight away for a hit. And then suddenly I've got a very similar team to this anyway. I've just got Bamford instead of Calvert-Lewin. So again, that is a decision that everyone will just have to make on their own is this the right time? Am I making enough changes? I would be pretty happy with this wildcard side. I just don't know if it's enough of a difference maker over the side that I've currently got. But if I can save a -4 and get Calvert-Lewin instead of Bamford and change a bunch of other things, that might be enough in the end. I probably wouldn't do too many other changes. I suppose the big one is Trent out to like another 5.5. We'll just put in Rudiger. I think Chelsea defence going forward is good. And also you're on a wild card, so you don't want to have to book in a load of transfers. So although Spurs and City aren't great, we know how good the Chelsea defence is. And then they got a lot of good players there. You could go for Reece James, because he'll be back from suspension after the next game. But obviously you wouldn't be able to play him this week, so that's something to consider. But if you wanted him long term, you'd possibly just put Reece James in instead. And then because you're wildcarding, you've hopefully got players that are going to play. So you could play Shaw, Semedo and Duffy in game week 4, for example, and then get James back afterwards. And this slowly starts to let you get to another premium forward. So the one we're trying to get to here is Lukaku. So I've got to make up 0.6, but I've actually got to make up 0.8 because Kane probably needs a couple of extra 0.1 millions to get to Ronaldo. So realistically, the options are either to downgrade Shaw to another 4.5, but I just think that's too much money out of defence, or to downgrade Torres to a 6. So whoever this is, it could be Sarr, it could be Harrison or something like that. And that gives you the 0.5 to spend. So you've got Lukaku and you've still got the money to upgrade Kane to Ronaldo. So I don't think that's that bad. I really don't. But the thing is, you're taking out Trent, who looks really good, to get 2 premium forwards in, who I don't think you're necessarily going to want long term. Now, you can always make changes later and restructure, but there are so many good 7.5 to 8 million forwards. Like, I feel like maybe having Trent and one of those is possibly better than Lukaku and James in the short term. Once those Game Week 7 fixtures hit, then maybe that's the time to make a difference. But if you look at Liverpool's fixtures, they play Watford in Game Week 8. Right, you could say from Game Week 7, Man City, Man United to come in the next 3, and then West Ham also, Brighton, Arsenal. That might be the time to jump off Trent Alexander-Arnold for a bit. The perfect fixtures is when Reece James starts to get Southampton, Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley. So that might be a good time to jump off and then use that money how you want. By Game Week 7, we'll have a whole different conversation to be having. But so it is possible to have 2 premium forwards and Salah, and I think Salah is like a non-negotiable for me. He has to be in the team. but it just means getting rid of Trent. And I don't know if I'm happy doing that. But if Reece James keeps playing week in, week out, he's a great option. I just don't know if that's going to keep happening around Champions League, which is also going to start soon. So that might be a move for later on. But something like that is what I would do. It's just, is it enough changes? Is it enough decent changes for my team? I'm just not sure right now, but that's the kind of draft I'd be putting together if I was wildcarding. There you go, that is it for this one. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it and found it useful. Getting a lot of thoughts out there around the wildcard. Like, I'm just still kind of undecided, to be honest. I don't think my team really needs it, but if there was a few things that went certain ways, like transfers that came in, you know, Torres and Jota are going to be options, and I want to get Calvert-Lewin in, switch to a premium striker, avoid taking a hit and fix my defence, I could see myself doing it. So I'm not ruling it out. I'm not trying to, like, you know, set it up for some crazy last minute thing. Like, I will, for most of the next 2 weeks, I will probably work out what my wildcard draft would be. And then if I need to press it at the end, I'm done. I'm not, one thing not to do is suddenly panic and press it at the end when you haven't given it any thought. That's a crazy thing to do. But yeah, give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Leave a comment below if you've got any more questions. I'll try and get to as many as possible. I've got a good few videos already planned this week, but if there's anything you want to see, let me know below as well. And lastly, shout out to everyone that signed up on Patreon. Big thank you to Jack, YT, Darren P, Bendick B, Dylan V, George D, Lemon C, Jeffrey C, sorry, and Jacob M. Lots of names to go through who have all signed up since the last video. If you want to check it out, if you want to get involved with Slack, the mini league that'll be set up for September as well, and then there'll be another one for October, November, December, etc., with prizes every single month. And then click that link in the description below and get signed up. I'll leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you soon.